Hello. It is November 12th, 2024, and yet another Tuesday, yet another little chess recap for some of the games I played. It's been a slow few meetups in the sense that we don't really have the usual chess league people showing up lately. I'm sure they're just busy. It's also coming close to Thanksgiving, so maybe they're just doing other things. But yeah, so it's basically just going to be me and Anthony playing a bunch of games again. So hopefully you'll find these a little interesting. I did decide to learn a new opening really quickly, and you'll see that in the second game. It worked out surprisingly okay, but I guess we'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But we did have 4 people playing today, just not in the chess league, or 2 people weren't in the chess league. But we actually ended the night playing Bug House, like OTB Bug House 3+2. And if you don't know, it's this 2v2 format where both players on a team, one person is playing white, one person is playing black, and then whenever you take a piece from your opponent, you can pass it to your teammate, and your teammate can spend a move to put a piece that you captured on their board. And that counts as a move, and you hit the clock and you go again, and you go next move. And of course you can receive pieces from your teammate. It was pretty fun. There was one game where I just randomly I let my opponent do a queen trade in the very beginning of the game, and all of a sudden, like 4 turns later, he had 3 queens on the board. I'm like, what is happening? Like, why does my opponent have 3 queens on the board? But yeah, it was fun. I don't even remember how the games went, but it was also just nice to play like some kind of blitz format, because I wouldn't say it's mindless, but it gets to rely on intuition a lot more, which I believe I am stronger in compared to other people here. So yeah, that's like one of the 2 things I think I have an advantage of over most people here. Intuition and opening knowledge. So anyway, let's get into the actual games, the actual 10-0 chess league games. So game number 1 against Anthony, I have the black pieces, and here we're going to start off with a modern. We're playing a modern again. I had good success with it on Saturday, so I figured, okay, let's run it back. Let's see if he has anything prepared. And from the opening, you can see his setup is pretty similar. He played knight f3, he played bishop d3. I included this a6 move just in case he wants to, like, for some reason, if he wanted to castle queen side, I would be ready with b5, and then just very quickly expand. But no, he castles short, so I just played knight d7, knight c3, and now I'm breaking in with e5. And we're like low-key kind of chit-chatting this game, or at least up to this point in the game. And he was like, you said something about d takes, and I was like, well, I mean, play how you want to play, right? D takes is it's actually the best move according to the engine, but d5 is also a good move. Or it's also a principled move because you gain space in the center, you're restricting black, blah, blah, blah. But you're also giving me what I want, because I want to play knight e7, f4, or f5, f4. So, play as you see fit. But he plays d5, knight e7, bishop e3, castles, now queen d2. I'm like, okay, you're going to try to trade off my my dark squared bishop here. I'm just going to continue with what I want to do, which was f5. So he thinks for a little bit, and he decides to take this time around, which I wasn't totally happy to see. I kind of wanted to get a lock structure, but in an effort to move quickly, I played knight takes, which is not exactly what doesn't align with what I want, right? If I wanted to lock the structure up, I should have taken with the G pawn and played f4 next move. His bishop also can't move right now, so it'd be a mild threat. And yeah, I just instinctively took with the knight. I totally could have just taken with the G pawn. I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying to move more quickly in the opening when I know I can make these moves pretty easily, which I'll talk to at the end of the recap. But yeah, I'll talk about it at the end of the recap. So knight takes f5, bishop takes f5, rook f5, and now knight e4. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, this is kind of going to be a boring position. I have the open f file or half open f file, and my bishops are a little congested, but I'll figure a way out. I try to expand with b5, and my plan was to play bishop b7, but after I thought about it, I was like, why am I playing b5, right? Like, I should probably be playing c6 if I'm going to try to push a pawn here, because it's going to chip away at this pawn on d5 that's by itself. And I mean, yeah, yes, c4, but I can take, and now the pawn's isolated, and it should be fine. But I decided to play b5. He plays b3, bishop b7, and now c4. I, for some reason, didn't realize he could play c4. Like, I don't know, it just makes so much sense, right? You play c4, you protect your d5 pawn, you win connect 4. Like, what's not to like about c4, right? Like, it makes so much sense. So I didn't see c4, and I'm like, okay, this is bad for me. But I just continued with queen e7, and you can see that the game is like slowly slipping away from my grasp. I mean, it wasn't really in my grasp except for not taking on f5 with the pawn, but anyway, rook a c1, rook f8, rook a f8, and then queen e2. So, okay, he's trying to maneuver over to the king side, but, you know, it's not like you have an attack on me, per se. You know, I have enough defenders in the position, so I should be okay. Like, this is fine. I decided to take on c4, and after he recaptures, I wanted to lock the queen side, so I played c5. And when I think back at it, I'm probably should have played c6 if I was going to push this pawn rather than c5, because if I play c5, my bishop is just like dead. Like, it doesn't do anything. I have to go this way, and it's going to take forever for me to reroute this way while also just not totally losing to having for giving white the open b file. But c5, rook b1, drop my bishop back to a8. You can see by the evaluation that this is just toast. This is just real bad. And you can see that, like, I'm just slowly getting constricted here. So rook b3, I drop my rook back f5, rook 5 f7. It's a weird thing to say, but anyway. Rook f1, knight f6. I'm trying to reroute my knight. I was hoping to trade this off, or, you know, at least if he trades with me, I can push my e pawn and open up this bishop. But he plays knight f5, knight ef5, and here I'm like, oh, I'm losing my rook. Now, it's going to be an exchange, right, regardless. But I need to obviously make a move. So I figured, okay, well, I'm going to lose this. This kind of sucks. But how can I use the time that he's going to use to capture my rook to make an active move? And I'm like, oh, well, e4. Now I'm poking at his knight. And I was looking at it, and after e4, I was like, oh, well, if he takes my rook, right, which he did, I can take his knight. And, okay, yeah, you take back with the queen, but I'll win the rook, the knight back. And now I just have a bishop and a knight for my rook. He has an extra pawn, so it's like kind of 6v6, right? It's like 6 points to 6 points. But I have more pieces, which in my mind was like, okay, well, I have more pieces, which means I can kind of create more threats as long as everything gets coordinated decently. And I'm like, okay, so that's fine. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you know, the problem right now is the b file is completely his, and I might suffer for it. And suffer I shall. He plays rook b8. I block with rook f8. He takes, take back with the queen. I totally could have taken back with the bishop, but I don't know. I felt like if I take back with the bishop, he plays rook b8 again, and it's not looking great. So queen f8. Here he plays rook b6. He's trying to hit two of these pawns, which, I mean, I can't do anything about. So I have to save one of them. I decided to save the d pawn. I figured, okay, you can take this one, and I'm a little worse. Like, you have the passed a pawn, but at least you don't have a d5 pawn that's going to keep pushing forward, right? I figured that would be worse. So he takes the pawn. Got to save my bishop. Well, I didn't have to move it per se, but, you know, I didn't want to tie my queen down to the back rank, so bishop b7, rook a3. Here I was trying to set up something not too sneaky, but I was trying to set up bishop takes d5, threatening back rank. But he saw it, so he played rook b3. Queen c7, stepping out of this, and now bishop g5. So my knight's under attack. I need to defend it, or I can move it out of the way, which is what I did. Knight d7. And here he's just moving his pieces around. Like, queen e4 doesn't really actively make a threat, so I'm like, okay, I can play my knight e5, which apparently the computer does not love. f4 makes a lot of sense here, actually. But I thought, okay, my knight's in a decent spot. I didn't see f4, but he plays queen b1, and now, I mean, there's just a lot of pressure here. I have to move out of the way, but I also thought, okay, well, I have two pieces attacking this this pawn. You know, maybe I can try to win the pawn, maybe this pawn, and like things are happening, right? Like, rook for two pieces. My two pieces are coordinated, but the b file is kind of the name of the game for him here. So he plays rook b1, or sorry, rook b8 for like the third time. Bishop f8. Now bishop h6 is a good move, trying to win the bishop, of course, and basically checkmate me. So I have to play. So the best move here was actually bishop c8, blocking this attack. I didn't see that, so I played queen e7. Also, I should note, around here is about where we're running low on time. I would say we had about like a minute and a half each or so. So I'm just making quick moves, and I'm not really thinking too hard. I'm just relying on intuition. I burned a lot of time after that that earlier knight g5 move, thinking if I can counterattack with e4. I spent a lot of time on it because I wanted to see if it would like work as well as I thought it did. But yeah, that's where like 2 minutes of my time went, unfortunately. Now here he plays queen b6, which is basically a blunder because I can fork with knight d7. So knight d7, you can take here. I take the rook. Oh, there's also mate, which I totally forgot about. So knight d7, yeah, you can do this. I would probably have to, well, I can take back with a knight, but yeah, taking knight sounds just much better. But also there's still this mate threat, so maybe you would have to go back here or play h3. And, you know, now it's like I'm just winning. So knight d7 is what I should have played, but I played knight takes c4 because, ooh, mate take pawn, me attack queen. Again, I'm low on time. I'm trying to move really quickly. So I totally missed knight d7. Here he takes on f8. I take back with the queen. He takes my queen, and here I totally just went on autopilot and I just took the bishop back on f8. And now he takes my bishop, and it's knight for queen. For some reason, I just did not see that this was hanging. So after he takes on f8, and I take with the queen, and he takes, I'm supposed to just take his queen back, and yeah, so now it's just like I have bishop, knight for bishop, and I'm winning. But, you know, I didn't see this for some reason. I was just looking at like this part of the board. I'm like, oh, I take the bishop, and I'm like, oh, oops. And I hear he forks my my king and my knight, so I moved to f7, and I resigned right after because, I mean, it's queen and 2 extra pawns. I mean, what am I going to do here, right? So, I mean, the opening was fine. I definitely misplayed this recapture. Like, strategically, I want to lock the center when I play this, so I should have just taken with the G pawn. But my kind of just like instincts took over, and I just played knight takes. And I mean, the position is still like okay after, well, not after b5, but yeah, so the position's okay here. So I wasn't too worried about that, but I definitely could have had an advantage, you know, early in the game rather than just be only slightly worse. But this is kind of just like an effort to move quickly in the opening. And then after knight 5 f7, I just didn't see this this knight g5 move. So yeah, just moving a little too quickly, and especially at the end when, you know, it's a time scramble, just not seeing this capture was really the big mistake here. Wow, I'm up a knight, but it's still +1. How interesting. Oh, it's because you're taking this, duh. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is obviously worse for white still, but yeah, I just missed this recapture. But, you know, it happens to the best of us. We all make mistakes, especially when we're moving quickly. My big problem just in general is that I move too slowly in the opening when I feel like I shouldn't be. So to one regard, I moved quickly, so that was good, especially in the opening, but then blunders happen, which you can't really stop. So game 2, I spent the last few days looking at an opening, trying to look at videos for a new opening for d4. I decided I'm dropping the Catalan because it's just too much to learn, too difficult. Like, even if people play main line, there's so much theory behind it that I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. That said, I still want a d4 opening to play. So I settled for a London. I'm kidding. I will not play the London. I will not play the London. At least not seriously. I might play it just to, like, in bullet for whatever reason, for shits and giggles, but no. So I'm playing a Kali system. It's characterized by this formation here. There's 2 different Kali systems. There's the C3 Kali, which is the Kotawal. Koltanowski. There's the Koltanowski system in which you play c3, and the idea in this system is to push e4 eventually with, you know, the standard Kali moves. So knight bd2, castle, rook e1, e4, and then eventually maybe even e5. But the system I played is the Zukertort system, Kali Zukertort system, where you play b3, bishop b2. The difference is you have this dark squared bishop to support your pawn chain that's eventually going to try to move to e5. So you would have these 2 pawns or just the 1 pawn. Furthermore, the other plan involves trying to land a knight on e5. And this goes for both positions. You're trying to land a knight on e5. Or sorry, for this system, you're trying to land a knight on e5, support it with f4, and lock the center up. And now you go for a kingside attack with this bishop pressuring h7. This bishop is supporting your central pawn chain. Knight comes over, castle, queen f3, or even like if the f pawn moves to f4, you play rook f3 and over or something like that. So anyway, castle. Castle, c5. This c2 pawn needs to stay here to support this bishop, so I'm not going to play c3. Also, it just blocks my bishop, so what's the point? So I played the new normal Knight bd2, takes on d4, e takes d4, knight c6, h3, or sorry, a3. A3 is a very useful move in this Kali Zuku tort because it prevents any bishop b4 or knight b4 nonsense. A5 is a good move. I thought he was going to play a4, to which I would have played b4, but that also would really shut down his activity on the queen side to be able to do anything. So I was like, sure, if you want to play a4, go play a4. I played rook e1, rook c8. I thought he was trying to pressure this pawn here, but my queen is still here, and my bishop is, nicely protecting it. So I was like, sure. I don't think that's really a threat. I played knight b4 or knight c4. I'm trying to bring this knight to e5 rather than this one, just because I didn't want to spend time to move this one and then move this one like that, which I guess is like the same amount of moves anyway. So maybe it didn't matter, but for some reason I thought this was slower than doing this. But he breaks with d5, or he attacks the center with d5, which is pretty logical, but I play knight c e5, getting my knight onto a good square. I'm anticipating that he wants to trade this off, in which case I would take back with a knight, and I would be fine. But he plays bishop d6. I played rook c1. Again, I didn't need to play rook c1, but I was just concerned for some reason that this c file might be a problem. He decides to trade the bishop off for my knight. I recapture with a knight. He recaptures one again, which basically doesn't let me play f4. But I get to play de, which kicks his knight away. So now his knight is kind of passive on d7. And I play rook e3. So I'm trying to rook lift my rook over. And eventually I bring my queen in over here to like h5. He'll play h6, and I'll just like bring my rook over here. Or I'll bring my rook back somehow and start probably putting pressure on the e file, just like stack up over here. Or I can try to find ways to sacrifice here. So maybe like rook c, e1, bishop c1, shablam, something like that. But he plays knight c5, which, I mean, it makes sense. You're trying to activate your knight. You could trade off my bishop, and it's like one less attacker. But I wanted to just be active. If you want to spend another move to take my bishop, sure. I played rook h3, which apparently wasn't the best move. I should have sacrificed right away. I just didn't see a follow-up here. Like, I saw up to here, but I didn't think this was quite as good as it could have been. So, maybe I should have. I didn't really consider just sacking on h7 right away. I also didn't consider it because of... in my mind, I was like, I don't have a knight to do a Greek gift, which I know is a common sacrifice in this opening. Like, I don't have a knight to Greek gift, so like, why would I sack here? I didn't see rook h3, this, and then whatever. So, big mistake on my part. A little unfortunate. I'll try to remember this. Rook h3, knight takes d3, queen takes d3. Very subtly threatening a mate in one on h7, but yeah, Anthony didn't see the mate in one here, so he played queen g5. He told me after the game he wanted to pressure my rook. Maybe there's a world you take here, you take back, and he can take my c2 pawn, and now things are a little spooky. But yeah, just mate in one. So overall, this opening went pretty well. I definitely misplayed. Or I felt like I misplayed this middle game part where I was trying to plop a knight on e5. I should have taken de5 and at least have this knight, and now I can threaten the Greek gift sacrifices that I keep mentioning. Not right away, but maybe after like something like rook e3, something like this, maybe it'll work out. But yeah, so just needed to be a little more tactically aware. This trade just I'm still better, but it wasn't quite as clear how I could attack this king, or if I just needed to transition into a different plan. In this position here, actually, if he didn't blunder mate in one, if he just played h6, I probably would have went back and just started going rook d3, rook d1, and then c4. That was my plan if he didn't blunder this. So yeah. Not the worst Kali game over the board. Granted, it's rapid 10-0, so it's not like over the board in the classical sense, but whatever. So moving on to game 3, I did the little piece shuffle behind the back, and I got the white pieces. He chose black, unfortunately. So, yeah, we get to decide, do we want to play another collie, or do we want to switch it up? I decided to go to e4, just to test him on the Rubinstein French. So we get Rubinstein. Knight d7 is the most common and main move in this position. Knight f3, knight f6, take, and c3. I knew c3 in my notes, but I was trying to remember the follow-up after bishop d6. Yeah, so I remember in one of the lines, and I couldn't remember which variation this was happening in. There's a line where I can go bishop b5 check and drag his bishop here and then play a4. And if he takes, I have a pretty forward pawn that I can actually pretty easily defend, all things considered. But there was another idea where if he like played knight d7, it was just like automatically worse. Something along the lines of knight e5 and queen f3. And I was trying to remember how exactly his pieces were supposed to be set up. And I think what I couldn't remember was that in the line I was analyzing, he plays b6 right away before he manages to develop his dark squared bishop. And I couldn't remember what I had, if anything, against the immediate and the natural bishop d6. So I spent a little bit of time here. I couldn't remember what I was trying to do here. Reconsidered bishop b5. But I figured, bishop b5, c6. Like, what am I doing there? What's the point? So I played bishop d3. A much more common and natural move in this Rubinstein French. I just wanted to like throw this little sprinkle in. Castle, b6, bishop g5, bishop b7. I know Anthony loves these fianchetto setups in the French, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you're trying to activate your French bishop. You can't really go this way. I mean, you could, but like by going this way, you're probably implying that you're going this way, which is a little slow, but at the same time, you're spending 2 moves to do this as well. So yeah. But yeah, like, I understand the logic. It's just whether or not it's sound. I think it's fine. Like, I don't see any problem with it, but I could be wrong. Rook e1, h6, draw my bishop back to h4. Just keeping this pin. If he wants to play g4, if he wants to play g5, be my guest. Oh, it's actually the best move. That is insane. If he played this, I would have probably thrown. I would have done this. I definitely would have done this. All right. Well, g5 was his best move. Crazy. c5 is his second best move. A close second, and rook c8 is rook c8. All right. Anyway, he played bishop e7, and I'm like, okay. So he went here, he went back, kind of wasted time. All good. Knight e5, creating the strong central knight. Also, kind of like a product of playing bishop e7. Like, you basically let me put a knight here. Unless you want to spend time to go back to d6, I was like, that can't be right. Knight d5. I was a little surprised by this move. I didn't think he would actually move his knight. And I figured, okay, well, generally speaking, the French bishop, which is this one, is the bad bishop. And in this case, this is probably my weaker bishop because I have all these pawns on dark squares that I can't really, it's creating a pawn chain that my bishop can't really do much with. So I figured, okay, well, I'm trading my bad-ish bishop for his better bishop. I figured, okay, this is good. Knight e7. I'm like, okay, now your knight's really passive. And granted, you could just come back to d5, not a problem. But I was like, okay, this position looks fine for me. I totally could have played c4 here, but I just figured my pawn was hanging. It's not actually hanging because of bishop h7 discovered attack, but I played played queen e2. I thought, okay, your supposedly bad bishop is not actually that bad. I kind of want to trade it off just so that it's not annoying me for the rest of the game. Also, there's an idea, just like knight f5, queen g5, and now you're attacking here. You're getting pressure with the knight. It's probably pretty annoying. But he played rook c8, and I basically forced the bishop trade here, right? If you move the bishop, that's probably not what you want. So he takes, I take with the queen, and then he plays queen d5, and I was like, I can take this pawn, right? And I spent a lot of time here because I figured if I take this pawn, I can't just go out this way. I have to spend time moving and zigzagging around. And I was trying to think, like, is this actually a free pawn? Or am I just going to, like, lose a lot of tempo? Or potentially even get my queen trapped? That's what I was most concerned about. Am I getting my queen trapped? I decided to take the pawn. Because I calculated if he goes here, here, that's fine. If he keeps trying to chase my queen around, I have this. And if he goes here, I have that. All right. And let's say he declines a queen trade. I can just, don't ignore that. But if he declines a queen trade, I can slip back this way. And sure, if you want to trade queens after all this, by all means. But if you want to attack my queen some more, like, I'll escape and I'm up 3 pawns. And, you just wasted a bunch of time for I don't know what. So okay, queen takes a7. It should be fine. He starts with knight f5, so I was trying to figure out what was his idea with knight f5. I'm like, oh, probably knight g4 because his queen's already targeting g2. So I didn't choose the best way to defend against it. I chose f3. G3 would have worked, but I didn't want to weaken my light squares like this. So it was either g3 weaken my light squares, or play f3 and weaken this diagonal that's just closed anyway. Granted, now the e3 square is like up for grabs, but I have a rook covering it, so like as long as my rook stays here, I don't have to worry about knight e3. So that's why I played f3. I thought it made a lot of sense here, but the computer's like, no, you should have played g3. But okay. I played f3. Rook fe8. I slide my queen back to a4. I was thinking about playing here, just to slide it over here. But I figured, b5, that looks kind of annoying. Can't go here now, and how am I getting my queen out of the way? So that's why I went queen a4. Queen a4, rook a8, slide my queen back to b3, offering the queen trade. I was thinking about playing queen c2, actually. But he gets 2 attackers on this, right? So that wouldn't really be too advisable to give the pawn back. So I said, okay, do you want to trade queens? Because if you take, this trade is fine for me. I get the open file and everything. So he plays queen b7. Now I play a4, and I knew this was the idea in this position. I just knew I had to push my pawns on the queen side because these 2 pawns are really tough to get past each other. And the rest of these pawns can definitely get a pass pawn on either the A or the B file, probably the A file. And that's going to be where all my play is. This knight is beautifully outposted, almost outposted on e5. f6 is obviously a move, but if he plays f6, I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to reroute this way, or maybe not there, but like I'll reroute here. You have a hole on g6 as well. I don't know if I could abuse that in the future. So I didn't think he was going to play f6, also because it weakens the e6 pawn, right? Now this is going to become under fire. So yeah, I just knew that a4 had to be the plan, and it's just a matter of trading the pawns the right way and converting it from there. So he plays rook a5, blockading my pawn. I bring my queen back to c2 to push b4. Brings his other rook to the a8 square. I play b4, kick his rook back to a7. Queen b3, supporting the pawn pushes here. And then he played king f8, which he told me after the game he didn't really know what to do in this position. Like, he didn't see any plans, so he kind of just shuffled and like wanted to see if there was like going to be a mistake that came from me, which we'll see. Sorry, we'll see as in We will see if that is the case. Not we will see that happening. We will see if that is the case. I played rook e d1 just to keep this pawn protected, because my plan was to push the c pawn to help with this whole pawn storm kind of idea, and this pawn was going to get left behind. The knight's attacking it, so that's why I played rook d1. And then here he plays b5, which I was like really surprised by. I didn't think it was too good of a move after some thought. Initially, I was like, oh, you're stopping c4. That makes a lot of sense. But then I, looked at the tension here. I'm like, if I trade, I lose a rook. So I have to push. I could also just not do anything, but I didn't think that looked particularly correct. Well, I mean, it's definitely not correct to let him take. Right, because if I just do like rook c1, he takes here, and I can't really do this. This is just bad, of course. That's even worse. So I'm like, okay, so b5, all right. I can't let him take. I can't push c4, so I got to push. And I mean, it kind of aligns with the plan I've been having this entire time. I'm trying to push my a-pawn. So now I have a passed a-pawn. His rooks are blockading it, but, I'll find a way to try to dislodge all of this. So queen c8. Now I get to play c4, right? This is all protected adequately. This pawn is defended, so I'm all good. He takes on c4. I take back with the queen. And now he gives me... he forks my queen and my rook, which I totally did not see. I definitely had a decent amount of time to see this, but I just didn't. And this is kind of like the result of... this is what I was foreshadowing in the early part of this game is... I said earlier that as long as my rook stays on e1, there's never a knight e3. I moved my rook out of the e1 square, so now there is a knight e3, and of course it's a fork. Luckily, he randomly shuffled his king to f8, which gave me this intermediate check, queen c5, which gets me out of this fork, and basically keeps the game going, or I would say massively keeps the game going for me. Because he is like slowly getting constricted. My knight's jumping in. It's looking bad. So step out of the attack here. I could have played rook e1 to chase his knight away, but I figured he's just going to go back to d5, and like, what's the point of this being here? So I'm going to at least double here, and I can like vaguely put pressure on the c pawn later in the game. Vaguely. So as mentioned, knight d5. And then here I spotted a neat little idea. I can try to trap his rook, starting with c6, knight c6. I failed to consider this move here, rook b7, and blah blah English. As I'm looking at it, I could probably just play a6, and like it's a little spooky for this rook. I mean, you can't go to b5. If you go to b6, I mean, am I not just pushing a7? Okay, maybe not. But I figured something was wrong about this. Queen d5. Ah, interesting. But yeah, I figured his position's getting really cramped. My pawns are slowly like suffocating all of his pieces. I figured this is great. So, knight c6, rook a6. And this is what I calculated and went with. I didn't actually see the other moves like rook b7. But I did see b5, and now his rook is actually just trapped. So he has to sack it for a pawn. I take back with the rook, or the knight, sorry. Take back with the knight. So now I'm up in exchange. Actually, I'm just up a rook. I'm not even up in exchange. I'm up a rook. Mentally, I thought I was up in exchange, but anyway. I bring my knight back to c6. Now, like, this knight is a big problem for the back rank. It's well protected. And I'm also just threatening a rook trade. He trades with me, which I was like, okay, sure. Now I get this open file on top of just having a queen as well. Knight b6. Pretty logical. It blockades the b pawn, but, I mean, you're down a rook, so it's going to be hard to continue the game from here. I played knight e7 just to try to kick his queen out of the way. He plays queen d8. My knight is defended, so I'm like, okay, I can actually continue with putting pressure on his position. So rook c1. Obviously, I'm threatening this the pawn here. He tries to defend it with knight d5, but I can just take the knight. And after he takes back, now I can take the B pawn, or sorry, the C pawn. And I mean, at this point, it's pretty hopeless. Like, this B pawn is promoting. And like, you can move your queen, but like, I'm gonna get a second queen at the very least. So I mean, he just traded and resigned right after. I mean, this position is hopeless for black up to here. So overall, it was 2 wins. Both as white, conveniently, interestingly enough. I definitely had a few chances to win the game as black. I just didn't see the tactics because I was trying to move instantly, and I mean that cost me. So a little unfortunate, but yeah. So something I realized recently is that, so for context, I end up spending a lot more time over the board compared to when I play online rapid games. And I know online rapid games don't really mean anything, like I should just use it for practice. But when I play those online games, I realize that I just move instantly in the opening because I know the moves are good. But then when I play over the board and I play the same opening, for example, like the French Rubinstein, oops. So like, for example, let me go back to the board here. You know, when I play this opening, like I know this is all theory, right? Like I know this is all theory, but when I play it over the board, I usually end up like thinking about it because like it's this one, right? I know better though. Like I know this is correct, but for some reason I decide to take time to think about it, and then all of a sudden I'm down a minute on the clock on move like 10, and it's kind of just like, what? Why? So today, I tried to move much more quickly, more so in the first 2 games. So when I was playing the modern, where I already know the plans and everything, and I knew that the moves follow the plan and aren't blunders, right? Not like castling is a blunder. Last time I played it. And in the Kali system game, I mean, your pieces go to the same squares like all the time, so I don't really need to spend time to think about it. Just do a quick double check to make sure that like a piece isn't randomly hanging or a pawn isn't randomly hanging, but you know, that I don't have to think about those moves. I did spend time in the French game just trying to remember the bishop b5 check idea, but I think I analyzed it under a different variation, so it didn't really work here. So yeah, like in the games, in the modern game, for example, when I was playing black, I was up like 2 minutes on the clock in the middle game where after the whole F takes and all the crap happened there. So I just don't know why I was so hesitant to play moves I know are good or are fine or theory over the board. Like, it just doesn't make sense that I'm not doing that instantly. So it's worked better for me today. Admittedly, I'm like missing the tactics again, but I mean, when am I not going to miss tactics, right? So overall, good games. I realized that I just need to move faster in the opening because I should know that I know this. I just need to be confident that I do know this and I'm not just randomly making a blunder on move 4. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on Saturday.